Welcome to Peter and Ruffy's Football Show. It's your daily fix of football chat from the stories in the back pages of the morning papers right through to the emerging news stories coming from the press conferences and the main talking points. Well, do you believe it is Judgment Day this weekend? Not only Celtic against Aberdeen, but Hibernian against Rangers. We'll discuss Ronnie's rant, John Hughes' big decision, and we'll also look at Ruffy's predictions for the weekend. I'm delighted to say our bootroom guest, he played for Celtic and Aberdeen, so he's well placed, Joe Miller, to give us his take on the big match at Celtic Park on Saturday. So really looking forward to it. Let's get into the meat and bones of it. Ronnie Deila has had a rant, and what a rant it is, because as I look at it, Celtic have been unbelievably successful for many years now, and everybody around Celtic wants to hurt us and find negative things. And everything is okay. Fan on this one. Ruffy, which is basically to say everybody hates.
I would have to agree with you, from a Celtic point manager coming out and doing that, but when you look at the nitty-gritty of it, he has to realise that he's not a manager of a wee team in Norway now, he's a manager of a massive side, and when you're a massive side, people don't want to see you doing well. I don't think there's a lot of people down in England like Man United because of the success they've had in European football. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
The
standards. Everyone?
Well, not everyone, but everybody looks at it. We don't be when you're a successful, jealous. There's no doubt about that. They want to see you get knocked off your peg, so you've got to be big enough to deal with it and see what it is. The bottom line is that the Celtic tradition is European football. And if you're going to be judged, that's what you're going to be judged on. You can't be judged in winning the league, because obviously Hearts are back there now. There's no Rangers, there's no Hibs. So he's a Celtic manager in a position. He's in a very strong position with them not being at the biggest strength of where they were with Martin O'Neill and Gordon Strachan and Neil Lennon. So he should be winning the games in the league and all that. Where he's going to get judged is European football, and I don't care what he comes out and said, he's failed. The last 16, he's on a backward. He's going backwards, Okay, still might qualify for the Europa Cup, there's no doubt about that, but if you're looking at it with where they were, they're nowhere near where they used to be in Europe.
Yeah, and let's cut to the chase on the real meaning behind it, because I think Ronnie's suggesting that there are some maybe in the media who have an agenda against Celtic. There may well be some who are guilty of it, we all have our own suspicions on it. A lot of members of the media who are upstanding and can look at something and reflect the mood of Celtic fans, and I think a lot of Celtic fans are not fooled by what they see, especially in the defence, Joe.
That's right. I mean, that's at the end of the day, when you're probably Celtic job's the biggest in the country, and not a lot of people took to his appointment, and obviously you're going to receive stick left, right and centre, but you've got to be big enough to take it and get yourself out of the situation, and to do that you've got to get results, and Ruffy's right, the European campaign has been abysmal, and that's where the fans have been really disappointed in, because everybody looked forward to the European nights and the Barcelonas coming to Celtic Park, and the expectation levels are going out to lesser sides are disappointing for the fans, but you're in that position and you've got to deal with situations that come along.
We should dwell on it too much, because I don't gains anything out of it. I think we've got to look at what they face now at the weekend, and I think if we're going to be critical, Ruffy, I'll be critical of Aberdeen. They've become a little bit tetchy on the basis that they don't think that it's all done and dusted if Celtic were to win at the weekend, but I think it is done and dusted.
Yeah, I would say it's done and dusted as well, but I mean obviously Derek's got his fans to consider as well, and that's what Ronnie Delia's doing. He's sticking up for the club, and Derek will do that as well, quite rightly. But I think if he's honest enough, if Celtic were to win at the weekend, I don't think any of us can see them coming back from that. But they'll go there and they'll hope they put up a good performance. But like both games, we're obviously going to touch on the Rangers one. Celtic and Rangers have all the strengths. I mean, what other teams in the SPFL can go and pinch another team's three best players? Like Dundee United. That's the strength they have in the money side of it, and that's why they're so successful, and that's why they should be successful.
Yeah, okay. Celtic against Aberdeen is one of a good-looking fixture card in the Premiership. Here is what we can look forward to tomorrow on STV, 2 o'clock till 6. Join us if you can. Dundee United against Ross County, Hamilton against St Johnstone. Hamilton might play that game with just 10 men just to accelerate the red card that undoubtedly will come this week. I'm joking, of course. Inverness against Dundee, Kilmarnock against Motherwell, and Partick Thistle against Hearts. And Robbie Nielsen clearly wants his side to try and bounce back from what I thought was a disappointing performance from the Jambos in midweek. I was looking for more from them.
Yeah, I don't think they played entirely well, but at the start of the season we had a lot of high expectations of the way Hearts were going to play, and I think they've kind of disappointed. And I feel we're at this stage of the season where teams kick on to maybe put that Christmas, New Year challenge, and if you're up there, you're up winning the title. So, and then teams will try and get into the top 6. But I think just now over the next few weeks, there's a lot of points to be grabbed. Teams will take points off each other, and everybody will be scrapping then. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that Aberdeen are out of it, but I just don't like the way teams, particularly Celtic, they're speaking about going into European games and what they're going to do, and then they flatter to deceive at times, and then they end up with egg in their face when players say they're going to win matches and things like that. But Aberdeen have done the same to a certain extent. But they've just got to do their football on the park and try and get a result and get themselves back into it.
Yeah, here's how the league table looks at the moment. Just briefly on that, Joe, if Celtic win, is it done and dusted for you then? Is there any way back for the likes of Aberdeen? And let's not forget, Hearts, they're only a couple of points behind.
I'll be honest, I didn't see Aberdeen really putting in a challenge. I think they had to have momentum and that experience. I think Celtic had that experience and too big a squad and better players, to be honest with you. Aberdeen have done well over the past few seasons, but I was always going to tip that Celtic would run away with the league, and I still believe they will do. Yeah,
Aberdeen, if anything, Johnny Hayes has mentioned, Ruffy, the players have been protected from the criticism. The manager's been taking most of the flack, as you would do. He's trying to protect his players. I think psychologically now they need to be able to go down there and try and boss the game. And as Joe mentioned here, I'm not sure they have, other than maybe Johnny Hayes, that I think was a big player the last time they were down there. When he went off, when there was a threat that Aberdeen could test Celtic last season, when he went off, they lost their way.
Well, there was a time last year at Parkhead, and we were there, when Aberdeen in the first half did dominate, and they were playing good football with Paul. A main factor in that. I thought he was excellent, and they have defensively, they can be very difficult to beat, but at the end of the day you're looking at Celtic at home and they're going to go for the jugular, and it just depends how Aberdeen stand up to it.
Yeah, so Celtic to win with or without Scott Brown?
Celtic to win, yeah.
Celtic, and I don't see Scott Brown, if he's out for a few weeks, Joe, that could be a bigger blow for Molde on the horizon.
It could be, and he has been an important player, but that's where Celtic will utilise their squad, and but I think they've got too strong a squad and too many players. I mean, Chris Commons came in and played here the other night there, and he was fine in that position. Look at the result they got. So I think they've got strength and depth in the squad to win matches now.
Yeah, okay, let's have a look at the predictor. Ruffy at the moment, smug as a rug, because he's got 118. He's so far ahead, he can't lose it now. I mean, it's done and dusted. It's almost like a Celtic and Aberdeen situation here. There's no way back for me, and he's starting to pick the same results, I see. But I've gone for Hamilton. Ruffy, I don't know what it is about you, but you just don't think Hamilton are going to win again. You're going to suffer the wrath of the Accies fans. Inverness for me to win. You've got it down as a draw, and of course, what Ruffy? That's fantastic. I think I can only maybe gain 2 or 3 points on you there. That's what I call strategic guesses from you. After the break, we're going to talk Hibs Rangers. It's going to be a cracker on this Sunday at Easter Road. We'll also look down the divisions as well as the Championship, League 1 and League 2 to come.
Hi, I'm Chris Sutton. To win this beautiful signed shirt from me, which club did Celtic sign me from?
Hi, I'm Craig Turnbull, and don't forget you can watch the PLZ Soccer News headlines Monday to Friday by clicking on the link below.
Welcome back to Peter and Ruffy's Football Show, looking ahead to the weekend fixtures, and there's certainly a lot of tasty games to look forward to. Alan Ruff is alongside me, Peter Martin, and we're joined in the boot room by former Aberdeen and Celtic player Joe Miller. Just before we get into the Championship, John Hughes has mentioned that he'll make a decision on the talks to extend his stay at Inverness, and it'll be based on the likes of player recruitment and budget, as well as obviously considerations that he's away quite a distance away from his family, Ruffy.
Yeah, you would expect that, with the success he's had in the Cup, and as a manager he'll be looking at how decimated his squad was at the beginning, and he wasn't given any money to sort of reinforce it, and he'll be looking at the whole situation up there. I keep talking about the crowd, 3,000 at every game. I'm sure every manager wants to be at a club where there's 10 and 11 and 12,000 there, and that's what he'll be assessing. There's no doubt about that. He had a wee sniff of the Dundee United job, and I'm sure there might be other clubs out there would fancy taking a shot at him.
Yeah, okay, let's look to the game that everyone will be talking about. It's on the Sunday, it's at Easter Road, it's Hibs against Rangers. Mark Warburton today mentioning that it's just another game, it's just 3 points, but if they go with an 11-point advantage, Joe, I think many are saying that could be just the line in the sand, Rangers running away with it.
I think they will. I think they've got their act together. They have played good football at times, but I think it's just for that division. I think they have run away with it, and I think they will get a result on Sunday.
Yeah. What do you mean by a result? A draw or a win?
No, I think they'll get a win. I think they'll do well there. I can't see Hibs, getting that. I think they're too strong, and the momentum that Rangers have at the moment, that will just carry them through. Because when a team's playing with confidence and in the back-to-back wins all the time, they just get better and better.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, even although, Ruffy, maybe a lot of people have been looking at Rangers and saying they're not firing in all cylinders in the last few games, they're still grinding out the wins. That's 11 on the trot, as Joe mentioned there.
Yeah, they're still winning games. You can't take that away from Rangers. It's up to Hibs. It's up to Hibs to put them on the back foot. They haven't been on the back foot very often this year. We saw it against St Johnstone. So I think Alan Stubbs will be telling his men, that it's up to them, not to wait and see what Rangers are going to do. They have to take the game to Rangers, and that's the only way they'll win it. I think the midfield for Hibs looks exceptional, I have to say. I think the midfield Hibs team are better than the Rangers midfield. I think there are a lot of young players in there with something to prove, and I think they could be the driving force. Yeah.
Do you think the game's going to be won and lost in the midfield?
Yeah, I think Hibs' strength will be in the midfield to win that battle, and then obviously with Cummins up front and Malonga possibly to take the chances when they come along. But I think the Hibs boys will remember the very first game when they were winning quite comfortably, and by the end I think it was 6-2, was it? So they'll not want that to happen. I think they've tidied up a wee bit at the back. There's no doubt about that. But I think it's one of these games on the day, which players step up.
Yeah, Alan Stubbs himself has said he can't allow the players, he doesn't want to affect the players, the sense of the occasion, the build-up, the hype, everything around it, but he believes, Joe, that Hibs are the favourites with the home advantage.
Yeah, they can be, you know, but it's all about sometimes when a manager puts a team out, he's got to have a strategy, how he approaches the game, and it's like, you know, where's the game going to be won, like Ruffy says, in the midfield area, but you know, I think there's more to it. I think, you know, if the game might not even be an attractive game of football, it might be just one of those tough games. It's looking like a 0-0 draw, but then all of a sudden there's only one goal separates the two teams, and maybe one of the teams scoring in the final minutes. But I do think Rangers will get a result.
Yeah, and I know you do think, Ruffy, that Hibs will win the match. So if they're going to win the match, do they take a leaf out of St Johnstone's book and try and, you know, play counter-attacking football, or do you think Hibs will try and take the game to Rangers?
I think we'll try and take the game to them. Obviously, the most important thing is stopping the two Rangers fullbacks. I'm sure Alan Stubbs will have looked at that. There are teams who have done it. But they'll be looking at the results. I'm not saying Rangers are playing poorly, but they'll be looking at the results 1-0 again either way. You know, so they'll be assessing these games and looking at probably picking bits out of that game of why these teams were so successful.
Here's how the fixtures look in the Championship for the weekend. Sunday, Hibs Rangers, but on the Saturday, Alloa against Queen of the South, Dumbarton against Morton. There is a cracker at the Falkirk Stadium. Falkirk against St Mirren, and then Livingston against Wraith Rovers. No surprise, Ruffy, that Peter Houston has picked up a one-match ban for his rant against the referee in the defeat to Rangers. I'm sure he'll have learned his lesson. He certainly learned his lesson after the Hibs game, even though he was well and truly missed.
He knew what he'd done was wrong. You know, he's taken the punishment, and I'm not saying he'll learn from it, because if it happened again, I think... Yeah, I'm credit to Peter. You know, he held his hands up. He knew what he'd done was wrong. You know, he's taken the punishment, and I'm not saying he'll learn from it, because if it happened again, I think any of us in that position, when you go to Ibrox and you're one each and you think you're going to get away with a reasonable draw, and then that happens, I think you do tend to lose it a wee bit.
Yeah, I've picked Falkirk in our treble, Ruffy. What's your choice for the...
I'm going to go for Ayr United tomorrow.
Yeah, okay.
So we just need Gordon to come up with another one, and that's a treble in the bag.
Yep, absolutely. And the great news about it for people who like to win vast amounts of money, had you been following our trebles on the Saturday afternoon, you'd be as skint as you are right now, to be perfectly honest with you, because we have been murder at this, Ruffy. I mean, I don't think we've got a treble. I don't think we're getting near a treble.
No, I was going to say to you, we usually put on a £15 treble, but I was thinking of doing tomorrow is taking the £10 and putting it on the treble and putting a fiver for the other three teams. No,
yeah,
so
just to kind of a counterbalance it. Yeah, absolutely.
And there's happens.
and there's no point in talking to Joe about trebles, because he usually ruins them anyway. Yeah, so there's no point in chatting about that. Of the other games on the Saturday, Ruffy, I mentioned Falkirk against St Mirren, because I think we expected more from St Mirren, Joe, in the Championship. It hasn't quite materialised.
No, but I think it's still a long way to go yet. I think they'll still get to play a part, and you know, Falkirk have done well. I think, you know, Housty's got a good side there. I do fancy them to win tomorrow, but you know, St Mirren have, you know, you thought they would have done better than they have done, but it's not materialised. But as I said, I think Rangers will run away with the league. You know, Hibs, Falkirk, that's how it will finish for second, third.
Yeah, and maybe Queen of the South, Wraith Rovers, battling it out. Wraith Rovers.
Yeah,
anyway.
I've been impressed with Wraith Rovers, impressed right from the start. You know, I think they were disappointed if they don't get into the playoffs, but I still agree that Queen of the South have got something to say about it.
Yep, okay, let's have a look at what's happening in League One as well, because I think it'll be quite an emotional day at the Somerset Park, because Peter Price passed away sadly, 83 years of age. He's been on the website, I think Ayr United, a nice little tribute, the greatest ever player, 213 goals in 7 seasons for the Honest Men. There'll be a minute's silence ahead of Ayr United against Stranraer. The other matches: Airdrie Albion Rovers, Cowdenbeath against Dunfermline, Forfar against Brecon City, and Stenhousemuir against Peterhead. By any standard, some amount of goals for Peter Price will be fondly remembered.
Yeah, I was there at the Hall of Fame night when he was inducted into the Ayr United Hall of Fame. Lovely gentleman, lots of great stories of the olden days, and yeah, it was a pleasure to be with.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you just run around the country going to Hall of Fame dinners, Ruffy? You know,
No.
if you're not in it, you're raging.
He's never in, is he?
He's in the Hibs Hall of Fame. Are you in the Partick Thistle Hall of Fame? You've got to be.
Yeah, I think I was in the early doors. I'm not in the Ayr United Hall of Fame. I was just asked along as a guest.
Yes, absolutely.
I
How
thought
many
it'd be
times
very
did you play for
difficult.
Ayr United?
Just the one, so I wouldn't have expected to get in the Hall of Fame. I mean, I know I played well, but I mean,
Oh, brilliant. Okay, from League One, let's look at what's happening in League Two. Here's your fixtures for the weekend. East Fife against Annan Athletic. Elgin City against Arbroath. Montrose take on Berwick Rangers. Queen's Park against Clyde. That'll be an interesting one. Stirling Albion against East Stirling. And I noticed Barry Ferguson saying, you know, he knows himself it's tough being a manager. They're seventh at the moment. Joe, you know what it's like to manage Clyde. I don't think he should quit. I think he should just hang in there.
He should just hang in there, and he's had limited resources, but he has brought in a few good players, and I think if he just knuckles down to the end of the season, makes his decision then. But it's too early just now to say whether he's going to move on and move on. But I think it's quite a difficult club to manage.
Yes.
But I think he's just got to we try to put them full time. But he's obviously got players in there part time, which is always difficult to get to a level that he wants to get to.
Yeah, and just briefly, Ruffy, do you think he's suffering the flack from people who maybe didn't realise the strength of Formerton when they were knocked out in the Cup?
yeah, I think they have to realise that some of the Highland teams have got a lot of resources behind them, and they were doing particularly well in the league. So I don't think there's much between the divisions in the Highland League.
Okay, thanks to Ruffy and thanks to Joe Miller for joining us here on the programme. We're off to see if there's any other Hall of Fame dinners that Ruffy hasn't attended, and we'll write them down on a list to see if we can catch one over the weekend. Join us tomorrow at 2 on STV if you can. Good night. Thanks for watching Peter and Ruffy's Football Show. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like to see more, then why not go on to plzsoccer.com. All our guests from the full series are there, and you can interact with various little competitions that we've got and see some of the other fantastic features in the boot room and Dream Team as well. So click on there, plzsoccer.com, and of course, not only Monday to Friday, Ruffy, we've got much more.
Yes, we certainly have. We have live football right through all the divisions, Scotland and England, 2 to 6.
2 o'clock till 6 on a Saturday. If you want the goals as they hit the back of the net, then click on plzsoccer.com. Thanks for watching.